In the soft glow of the late afternoon sun filtering through the expensive drapery, the living room was a picture of opulence. Marble floors, designer furniture, and gleaming chandeliers created an illusion of warmth and comfort. Yet, within these walls, a storm of terror brewed. Clara sat curled on the edge of an oversized leather sofa, her trembling hands clasped tightly in her lap, as if seeking solace from a looming darkness that overshadowed her existence. Charles, her husband, stood before her, a figure of arrogance and grandeur, his crisp white coat a stark contrast against the luxurious backdrop. He exuded an air of authority, his presence suffocating. "You're pathetic, Clara," he spat, the disdain in his voice slicing through the fragile atmosphere. "You think you can just sit here and waste your life? What have you contributed to anything?" Clara's heart raced, each word cutting deeper than the last. The bruises, both seen and unseen, marked her skin and soul. She longed to transcend this moment, to slip away into the safety of her thoughts. But the weight of his venomous gaze held her in place, like a deer frozen in the path of an oncoming vehicle. She forced herself to breathe, drawing in air that felt thick with fear and resignation. "You're lucky to have me," Charles continued, his tone dripping with contempt. "You'd be nothing without my money, my name. Remember that." He leaned closer, his breath hot and acrid, matching the aggression in his stance. "What are you going to do? Clara, eat another box of chocolates while I save lives? You're a joke." A flicker of defiance ignited within her, like a flame struggling against a harsh wind. She had spent years cultivating the image of a perfect wife, allowing his words to trap her in a gilded cage. But as she looked into his cold, calculating eyes, something shifted. In that brief moment, she felt an ember of her own strength stirring, awakening something long forgotten. Clara's mind drifted to the countless nights spent alone, where the weight of his expectations pressed down on her chest like a boulder. The lavish parties, the envious glances from friends who envied her life, seemed like distant memories now. They stood in stark contrast to her reality, where every compliment Charles received only served to tighten the noose around her spirit. She remembered the times when laughter echoed in the halls of their home, now replaced by the suffocating silence that followed each of his tirades. "You think you can just walk away from me?" Charles sneered, stepping back as if he could physically separate himself from her growing resolve. "You have nowhere to go. No one will believe you. You'll always be my wife, and you'll always need me." The truth of his words loomed large, heavy with the weight of dependency. Yet Clara's heart raced as she considered the possibility of escape. A yearning wrapped itself around her, a silent rebellion against the life that had clipped her wings. She imagined herself free, unhindered by his suffocating presence. What would it feel like to wake up without the clench of fear in her stomach? As Charles launched into another tirade, she focused on her breath, the rhythm steadying her racing heart. The flicker within her grew, bolstered by the quiet thought, what if? What if she took the first step towards freedom? The thought felt alien, yet exhilarating, filling her with a vitality she thought lost forever. "Enough!" Clara's voice burst forth, surprising even herself. It trembled like a leaf in the wind, but held a firm resolve that startled Charles into silence. His eyes widened, a mix of disbelief and rage dancing across his features. "What did you just say?" he barked, disbelief seeping into his tone as he slowly straightened, losing the casual menace he had wielded moments before. "I said enough," she repeated, her voice stronger this time. The weight of the words lingered in the air, echoing against the walls that had held her captive for too long. The tension in the room shifted, crackling like static electricity before a storm. Charles's face twisted into a savage grin, a predator cornering his prey. "You think you can defy me? Do you really want to see what happens when you do?" But within her rising fury lurked a glimmer of courage that quelled the quaking uncertainty in her heart. Clara stood up, her legs shaky but determined. She refused to sink back into the shadows he cast. She raised her chin, meeting his eyes with a challenging gaze that had been absent for far too long. "I will not be your punching bag anymore, Charles. I deserve to be something more than a trophy on your wall." His laughter, sharp and cruel, filled the room. "You're delusional, Clara. You think you can just walk out of here and find happiness? You'll be nothing without me. I will make sure of it." Yet she felt the tiniest crack in the fortress he had built around them. Clara's thoughts raced through her mind like a torrent, calculations and plans forming in the midst of chaos. The words of a child from a distant memory echoed in her mind, a reminder of resilience. "Dad, can she stay with us?" The innocent inquiry from a young boy, full of sincerity and hope, cut through her muddled thoughts, reminding her that compassion still existed in the world. As Clara contemplated her next move, her heart drummed fiercely against her ribcage. She knew she had to act, to escape, but uncertainty gripped her. Would she ever find the courage to leave this life behind? As she stared into the depths of Charles' cold eyes, a new determination bubbled beneath the surface. She would not allow his cruelty to define her any longer. But just as she felt the weight of her resolve settle, the doorbell chimed through the oppressive silence of their home, a jarring note that shattered the moment. The sound reverberated through her, filling her with dread. Charles turned sharply, an irritated frown furrowing his brow as he shot her a warning glare. "Who the hell is that?" he growled, his tone darkening once more as he moved towards the door, leaving Clara's heart racing. She felt a fresh wave of fear, but this time it twisted into something sharper. As he opened the door, a figure stepped into the threshold, and Clara's breath caught in her throat. This unexpected arrival could either be a lifeline or a devastating blow. Moments hung heavy in the air, and the tension thickened, a silent promise of what was to come. Clara knew she stood on the precipice of change, the fragile gateway to a new existence opening wide, but at what cost? The intervention she never anticipated had just begun, and everything was about to shift. Clara felt a surge of adrenaline coursing through her, propelling her toward the unknown. Would she have the courage to seize it? The atmosphere hung heavy as Clara felt the weight of Charles's words settle around her like a leaden blanket. She thought she had seen it all, but as the silence stretched, something unexpected broke through the tension. From the corner of the room, Max, her 10-year-old son, emerged, his small frame filled with determination that belied his age. "Enough! Dad!" His voice rang out with an innocence that shattered the oppressive air. Clara turned her head, surprise washing over her as she took in Max's fierce expression. He stood tall, his tiny fists clenched at his sides, his eyes wide yet steady. It was a spark she had not anticipated, igniting a flicker of hope in her heart. Clara watched as Charles's demeanor shifted instantly, surprise morphing into irritation. "What did you say, Max?" he snapped, his tone sharp like a blade. But Max did not waver. Instead, he took a step closer to Clara, placing himself between her and Charles with an unwavering stance. "Dad, can she stay with us?" The simple question hung in the air, a lifeline thrown into the stormy sea of their existence. Clara's breath caught in her throat, and for a fleeting moment, she felt the shadows that had haunted her for so long recede. Max's innocent bravery was a balm to her weary soul, a reminder that despite the chaos, there was still light within their home. Charles scoffed, looking down at his son with disbelief. "Stay with us? I thought you were smarter than that, Max. She's useless, a burden that drags us down." His words dripped with venom, but Max remained resolute, undeterred by his father's disdain. "But she's my mom. She should be here with us, not hiding," Max retorted, his voice rising with each word. Clara's heart swelled with pride and fear. She had always shielded her son from the worst of Charles's wrath, but now, here he was, standing up against the very man who had instilled so much fear in their lives. The courage of her little boy was a bittersweet reminder of what they had lost and what they were fighting for. "I don't care about your mother's problems. She chose this life," Charles shot back, his frustration palpable in the air. A muscle in Clara's jaw tightened as she fought against the tears that threatened to spill forth. His words carved deep into her heart, a reminder of the years spent in silence, surrendering to the monster that had taken root in their home. Yet, as Max stood his ground, Clara felt a shift within her. Her son was witnessing the truth of their lives, and in his innocence, he had become her unexpected ally. She longed to protect him from the bitterness of their reality, but now she realized that he deserved to see the truth, to understand the strength that resided within him. "Max," Claire whispered, her voice trembling. She reached out, wanting to pull him back into the safety of her embrace, but he held firm, eyes locked on his father. In that moment, he embodied the courage she had long thought lost to her. "Why can't you just let her be?" Max's voice rang with the innocence of youth, yet it carried the weight of truth. She deserves to be happy too. Clara felt warmth spread through her heart, a glimmer of hope igniting in the darkest corners of her mind. What if this moment, this defiance, was the catalyst she had been waiting for? Charles, no longer the towering figure of authority, began to falter under the weight of his son's conviction. Clara could see the annoyance flickering in his eyes, battling against the growing unease. It was a potent mix, one that made her pulse quicken. Then, suddenly, the front door swung open, and in walked Dr. Richard, a friend of the family and a renowned surgeon, drawn in by the commotion. His presence was like a bright light cutting through the oppressive shadows. Clara felt herself straighten at the sight of him, her breath momentarily hitching in her throat. Richard was a man known not just for his skills in the operating room, but for his integrity and compassion. "Is everything all right in here?" he asked, his voice calm yet firm, surveying the tense scene before him. Clara's heart raced. This was the moment she had both feared and hoped for. Would the doctor see what lay beneath the surface? Charles shrugged, dismissive. "Just a little family disagreement. Nothing to worry about." But Clara could see the wariness in Charles's eyes, the way he squared his shoulders as if preparing for an attack. Richard's gaze shifted to Clara and then to Max, who stood defiantly. "Max, what were you saying?" he prompted, his tone gentle yet probing. Clara watched as her son's small frame seemed to swell with pride at being acknowledged by the doctor. "She should stay with us. She shouldn't have to hide," he declared, his voice steady. Richard's expression softened and Clara held her breath, praying for an ally in this moment of vulnerability. "Max, I understand how you feel," Richard replied, kneeling to meet the boy's gaze. "Your mother deserves to be treated with respect and love. No one should have to endure what she has." Clara felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes as she listened to Richard's words. They were a balm to her spirit, a reminder that kindness still existed in the world. As Richard stood back up, he lifted his gaze to Charles. "I think it's time we talk about how this family dynamic affects everyone involved." Charles bristled, his fury barely contained. "What do you know about my family?" he spat, the venom returning. But Richard remained unfazed, his demeanor calm and collected, like an anchor amidst the storm. "I know enough to see the toll it takes on your son," Richard replied, his eyes sharp and unwavering. Clara felt a rush of gratitude towards the doctor. He was not afraid to challenge the darkness that had settled over them. Max glanced up at Clara, his expression a mixture of hope and uncertainty. In that moment, she understood the burden he had been carrying, the weight of living in a house filled with fear and anger. It was a reality she had tried to shield him from, yet here he was, bravely standing for what was right. "Mom, we can figure this out, can't we?" Max's voice trembled slightly, but his determination shone through. Clara's heart swelled with love, igniting a flame of resolve within her. This was their moment. Together, they could break free from the chains that bound them. Before she could respond, Charles erupted, his voice a thunderclap. "This is ridiculous. You think you can just waltz in and dictate how I run my family?" His anger filled the room, a tempest of wrath that threatened to swallow them whole. "We need to protect Clara," Richard countered, standing firm against the tide of Charles's fury. "Your son deserves a safe environment, one where love and respect reign. That starts with acknowledging the truth." As the tension escalated, Clara felt the atmosphere shift around them. It was a precipice of choices laid out before her, each one leading to a different future. She could feel the weight of her past pressing against her, the fear that had dictated her life for so long. But now, with Max's fierce spirit and Richard's unwavering support, she felt the stirrings of hope. "Enough!" Clara finally found her voice amidst the chaos, a soft but resolute declaration that commanded attention. All eyes turned towards her, and she felt the power of her truth surge within her. "I won't hide anymore." As the words left her lips, she could almost taste the freedom they promised. She felt her heart race, trembling on the edge of a new beginning. Yet, in the depths of her resolve, she sensed the storm was far from over. Charles would not let go easily. For the first time in years, Clara stood poised to reclaim her life. But as the confrontation loomed, the shadows of the past whispered warnings, and the stakes had never been higher. As Dr. Richard stepped into the room, the air shifted, charged with an energy that felt almost electric. His presence broke the stifling tension that had enveloped Clara and Max, and for a brief moment, the world outside ceased to exist. The sunlight that streamed in through the grand windows seemed to shine a little brighter as he advanced further inside. Clara's heart quickened, not only from the relief of seeing a familiar face, but also from the warmth that radiated from him, a stark contrast to the coldness that permeated her home. "Is everything all right in here?" His voice was steady and calm, yet it carried an authority that demanded attention. Clara felt a swell of gratitude mixed with something deeper, a longing for protection that she had not dared to acknowledge until now. She looked at Richard, and in that moment his kind eyes met hers, silently affirming that she was not alone. Charles turned, irritation etched on his face. "What are you doing here, Richard? This is family business." His tone was dismissive, but Clara could see the way Richard squared his shoulders, unyielding. "Family business or not, I couldn't help but overhear. It sounds like your business is causing harm," Richard replied, his gaze piercing through the facade that Charles had so carefully constructed. Clara could almost feel the shift in power dynamics, the way Richard stood tall, solid, as if he were a fortress against the storm that was Charles. Max, emboldened by the arrival of his mother's friend, stepped closer to Richard. "Dad is being mean to Mom," he said, his voice tinged with an innocence that cut through the tension. Clara's heart swelled with pride for her son. His bravery was a revelation, a reminder of the love that existed amidst the chaos. Richard knelt beside Max, his expression softening. "It's not okay for anyone to be mean, especially not in their own home. Clara deserves to feel safe here, don't you think?" He turned his gaze to Charles, who bristled at the implication of his words. "Safe? What are you suggesting, Richard? That I'm the bad guy here? Charles' voice dripped with sarcasm, but Clara could sense the underlying fear. Richard was powerful. He possessed the wealth and influence that could shatter the illusions Charles had built around them. Clara found herself holding her breath, captivated by the way Richard stood up to Charles. The hope that had flickered within her began to grow, a small flame igniting against the darkness. Perhaps, just perhaps, she wouldn't have to endure this torment forever. Richard's unwavering support filled her with a newfound sense of purpose. I'm suggesting that you take a hard look at how you treat your family, Richard replied, unwavering. Clara is a remarkable woman, and she deserves better than this. The conviction in his voice rang out like a clarion call, and Clara felt the walls that had confined her heart begin to crack. Max, emboldened by Richard's words, turned to his father. Can we just let her stay? She's always been here for me. Why can't you just be nice? His small voice was earnest, and Clara could see the confusion in his eyes, the innocent hope that perhaps his father would change. Charles's face contorted with a mixture of anger and disbelief. You think this is some sort of game, Max? You think you can just decide who stays and who goes? His words were sharp, but the uncertainty in his tone suggested cracks in his authority. I'm not playing. I just want Mom to be happy, Max insisted, his small fists still clenched in determination. Clara's heart swelled at her son's fierce loyalty. It was a reminder that the love they shared was more powerful than the darkness that threatened to consume them. Richard turned his focus back to Clara, and in his gaze, she found understanding. Clara, is this what you want? To stay here despite the pain? His question pierced through her confusion, forcing her to confront her own desires. Tears pooled in Clara's eyes as she shook her head. I don't know, she stammered, her voice trembling. I want to stay for Max, but the weight of her circumstances crashed down upon her, the years of silence and submission echoing in her mind. Richard's expression softened, and in that moment Clara saw the depth of his compassion. You don't have to have all the answers right now. What matters is that you deserve to feel safe, to feel valued. You have a choice. He paused, letting his words sink in. If you want to leave, I can help you. Charles scoffed, the disdain palpable. Help her? With what? A handout? She's not worth the trouble, Richard. The venom in his voice was unmistakable, but he was losing ground. Clara could sense it, the way Richard's moral superiority hung in the air. A quiet declaration of war against Charles's cruelty. Stop it, Charles. Clara unexpectedly found her voice, and it rang out with a strength she hadn't expected. You don't get to decide what I'm worth anymore. It felt liberating to speak those words aloud, to reclaim her identity from the wreckage of their life together. Max beamed up at her, his eyes shining with pride. That's right, Mom. Richard smiled, a glimmer of approval in his eyes as he turned back to Charles. You've underestimated Clara for far too long. This is not just about you anymore, it's about her and Max. If you can't see that, then you don't deserve to be called a father. The air crackled with a tension that was palpable as Clara observed the battle unfolding. The realization that she had allies, that she could find strength within herself, began to wash over her like a warm wave. The love from her son, the support from Richard. It was all more than she had dared to hope for. But then, as if sensing the shift in the room, Charles' eyes darkened with fury. You think you can just waltz in here and dictate my life? This is my house. His voice rose, and Clara felt fear grip her heart. Richard's composure remained intact as he stood firm. It's time for you to step aside, Charles. Your actions have consequences. And it's time Clara has a life free from your control. Clara's breath quickened, the weight of uncertainty pressing down on her. This was a turning point, and she felt the ground beneath her shift. Yet a dark shadow loomed. The threat of Charles's wrath still hung in the air. Then, without warning, Charles lunged forward, his anger boiling over. You think you can take her away from me? You're wrong. His voice thundered through the room, and Clara felt her heart race. In that moment, she realized the precariousness of their situation. Would Richard stand against Charles's fury? Would she finally break free from the chains that had bound her for too long? Clara, come with me, Richard said, his voice steady despite the chaos. But before she could respond, the tension exploded in a cacophony of sound and fury, leaving Clara standing on the precipice of change. The future hung in the balance, uncertain yet full of promise. A choice had to be made, and as the storm raged around her, she felt a new resolve take root within her heart. The path ahead was fraught with danger, but for the first time in years, Clara felt the stirrings of hope and courage. Would she take the leap into the unknown? The answer loomed just beyond the horizon, and she could almost taste the freedom that awaited her. Clara blinked, her eyes adjusting to the brightness of Richard's grand home. The air was fragrant with the crisp scent of lavender and lemon, a welcome contrast to the stale, oppressive atmosphere she had just escaped. As she stepped through the ornate doors, her heart raced with a mix of apprehension and disbelief. Was she really safe? The lavish surroundings felt surreal, almost like a scene from a film, one where she had never expected to find herself. Richard guided her gently to a spacious bathroom adorned with gleaming marble and polished fixtures that reflected the light in a dazzling dance. "Take your time," he said softly, his voice a calming balm. "I'll be right here if you need anything." With that, he stepped out, leaving her to confront the sanctuary that awaited her. Clara stood at the threshold, her fingers trembling as they brushed against the intricate tiles. She had not washed away the grime of fear in what felt like an eternity. The thought of stepping into the warm embrace of water felt almost foreign, yet achingly familiar. She hesitated, glancing at the tub filled with steaming water, the bubbles shimmering like tiny jewels. Could she allow herself this moment of indulgence? As she sank into the bath, the warmth enveloped her, washing away not just the physical dirt, but the emotional scars that had clung to her for so long. Each droplet that rolled down her skin was a whisper of comfort, a reminder that she was deserving of care. Her thoughts drifted as she scrubbed away the remnants of her old life, the echoes of Charles's cruel words fading into the background. The fear that had gripped her heart slowly began to loosen its vice-like hold. Clara closed her eyes, letting the warmth seep into her bones. She imagined the life she could have, one filled with laughter, safety, and love. The bubbles danced around her as if they were teasing the edges of her dreams. Could she really hope for such a future? The question hung in the air, heavy yet tantalizing. After what felt like an eternity, Clara emerged from the bath, feeling renewed. The plush towels wrapped around her like a cocoon, absorbing the lingering doubts that had haunted her. Standing before the mirror, she studied her reflection. The woman looking back seemed different, softer, as if the water had washed away not just the grime, but also the years of pain etched into her features. With trembling hands, she combed through her damp hair, the act feeling almost luxurious. As she dressed in the fresh clothing Richard had provided, a soft, cream-colored sweater and comfortable jeans, Clara could hardly recognize the woman who wore them. There was a spark in her eye, a flicker of hope igniting for the first time in ages. She turned to leave the bathroom, the anticipation of what lay ahead, mingling with a cautious optimism. Richard was waiting, a gentle smile gracing his features as he saw her emerge. "You look wonderful," he said, his words wrapping around her like a warm embrace. Clara felt a blush creep up her cheeks, a sensation she had nearly forgotten. "Thank you," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. The kindness in his eyes made her heart race, stirring emotions long buried under layers of fear and despair. "Let me show you around," Richard offered, extending his hand. Clara hesitated for a heartbeat, but then reached for him, the touch of his hand grounding her in this new reality. He led her through the expansive rooms, showcasing the art that adorned the walls, the cozy nooks filled with books, and the breathtaking view of the garden spilling with vibrant colors. Each step felt like a revelation, a reminder that beauty still existed in the world. "This place is incredible," Clara breathed, awe spilling from her lips. "It's nothing compared to what you deserve," Richard replied, his tone earnest. "You should never have to feel afraid or alone again." Clara's heart tightened at his words, and she felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude and something more, an undeniable connection. "I can't believe this is real," she admitted, the weight of her past still clinging to her like a shadow. "Believe it," he urged, his gaze steady on hers. "You're safe here. We'll figure everything out together." Just as she began to breathe more easily, a familiar dread slithered back into her mind. Charles. The thought of him, of his wrath, cast a long shadow over her newfound comfort. What if he comes looking for me? Clara's voice trembled. The fear of losing this sanctuary was overwhelming. Richard's expression hardened slightly, a flicker of protectiveness igniting within him. "He won't come here. I won't allow it." His confidence reassured her, yet the specter of Charles loomed large in her thoughts, a haunting reminder of the life she had just fled. "Can he really just let me go?" Clara asked, uncertainty creeping back in. She had grown accustomed to Charles's controlling nature, and the idea of him simply accepting her departure felt improbable. Richard placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder, grounding her. "You have rights, Clara. You deserve to live without fear. I'll help you find a way." His words were a salve to her worried heart, but Clara could not shake the anxiety that thrummed beneath her skin. As they continued their tour, her mind raced with possibilities. The afternoon sun began to dip lower in the sky, casting golden rays that danced across the room. Just as Clara began to relax further, the ringing of Richard's phone cut through the tranquility. He stepped away to answer, leaving Clara to absorb her surroundings. She wandered to the window, looking out at the lush garden. It was a world away from the bleak grayness of her old life, filled with vibrant blooms that seemed to beckon her closer. She longed to step outside, to breathe in the fresh air and feel the sun on her face. Yet the fear of Charles' return lingered like a storm cloud overhead, threatening to darken her new reality. Richard returned, his brow furrowed slightly. "I need to check on something," he said, his tone serious. "Stay here and don't worry." Clara nodded, but a knot formed in her stomach. She wanted to trust him, to believe that everything would be okay, but the shadows of her past were relentless, whispering doubts that clung stubbornly to her thoughts. "Richard, what if—" she started, but he interrupted gently. "I'll be back soon. Just trust me." As he left the room, Clara felt the weight of the world settle back onto her shoulders. Alone, her thoughts spiraled. Could she truly leave Charles behind? The door to her past felt ajar, and she feared it might swing open at any moment, dragging her back into the darkness. Just then, a sudden noise broke through her reverie, the unmistakable sound of a key turning in a lock, the heavy thud of footsteps approaching. Clara's heart raced as she turned toward the source, dread pooling in her stomach. Was it Charles, come to reclaim what he believed was his? The thought sent a shiver down her spine, and she felt her breath hitch in her throat as the door creaked open, revealing a familiar silhouette. "Clara?" the voice called out, laced with a mix of surprise and determination. In that moment, Clara's world shifted once more, the safety she had just begun to embrace hanging in the balance as the figure stepped into the room. Clara stepped into the living room, her heart still fluttering with a mixture of disbelief and hope. The lavish decor, the sunlight spilling through expansive windows, seemed worlds away from the shadows that had cloaked her life for so long. Richard's home was a sanctuary, a newfound refuge, yet beneath the surface of her gratitude, a whisper of doubt lingered, threatening to overshadow her fragile sense of safety. Max, perched on the edge of a plush sofa, surveyed the space with wide eyes, soaking in the splendor. "Can we stay here forever, Mom?" he asked, his innocent question tugging at Clara's heartstrings. She wished she could promise him that this was their new reality, that the nightmares of their past had been vanquished. But lingering in her mind was the specter of Charles, a constant reminder that freedom did not come without its own set of challenges. As she moved about the room, taking in the artwork and the elegant furnishings, the doorbell chimed, echoing through the quiet space. An uneasy tension slithered through Clara's veins. Who could it be? Richard's expression shifted slightly. He glanced toward the door, his brow furrowing. "I'll get it," he said, his voice steady. Clara watched as he strode toward the entrance, her heart racing. She couldn't shake the feeling that Charles might have managed to worm his way into their lives even in this pristine haven. The thought sent a shiver down her spine, but she pushed it aside, trying to focus on the warmth of the moment. Richard opened the door, revealing a tall figure dressed in a tailored suit. Clara's heart dropped as she recognized Charles, standing there with an air of calculated charm, a facade of civility draping over his true nature like a thin veil. He stepped inside, his gaze sweeping over the room before landing on Clara, a predatory glint in his eyes. "Clara," he began, his voice smooth, "I was just in the neighborhood and thought I'd check on you and Max." The words were coated with false concern, every syllable dripping with insincerity. "What do you want, Charles?" Clara managed to say, her voice barely above a whisper, yet it carried the weight of her resolve. She took a step back, instinctively moving closer to Richard, whose presence felt like a protective shield. "I just want to make sure you're doing all right," he replied, his demeanor shifting slightly as he tried to play on her vulnerability. "You know how it is. People talk. I've heard some unsettling things about your mental state lately." His smile was tight, his eyes piercing, as if he were waiting for her to crumble under the pressure of his words. Clara felt the heat rush to her cheeks, a mixture of anger and fear igniting within her. "What do you mean?" she demanded, her voice gaining strength. "What have you been saying?" "Oh, nothing too serious," he shrugged, feigning nonchalance. "Just the usual whispers about a woman who leaves her husband and thinks she can start anew without consequences. People have questions, Clara. They're concerned for you, and for Max." He let the implication hang in the air, a calculated attempt to sow seeds of doubt, both in Clara's mind and in Richard's. Richard's expression darkened, and he stepped forward, his body rigid with indignation. "Clara is safe here. She's not going anywhere near you or your toxic influence again." His voice was firm, a stark contrast to the uncertainty that had filled Clara moments before. Charles's smile faltered, replaced by a flash of irritation. "You don't know her like I do. She's fragile, and people like you tend to take advantage of that." He turned his attention back to Clara, his tone shifting from charming to menacing. "You need to think carefully about your decisions. You're not the only one who has a stake in this." As the tension thickened, Clara felt the ground beneath her shift. Richard's presence was reassuring, but the truth was that Charles still held power over her, the kind of power that twisted reality and created doubt. His words echoed in her mind, a haunting reminder of the past she had fought so hard to escape. "Don't listen to him, Clara," Richard urged, his voice grounding her. You've taken a brave step towards reclaiming your life. Don't let him manipulate you any longer. Brave? Clara echoed, the doubt creeping in as she glanced at Charles, whose smirk returned emboldened by her hesitation. How can I be brave when he can just twist everything I do or say? Charles leaned back against the doorframe, a picture of false innocence. Clara, you've been through a lot. It's understandable that you might feel disoriented, even paranoid. Leaving me was a big decision, and I'm sure you're questioning whether you really made the right choice. Clara's heart raced as his words burrowed into her mind. The fear that had begun to dissipate in Richard's presence rose up like a tidal wave, crashing over her newfound confidence. Could she truly believe she was safe? Or was she just a lost soul, fumbling through life without a compass? Richard's hand found her shoulder, a steadying presence that urged her to confront her fears. You're not alone anymore, Clara, he said, his voice low and reassuring. You have Max, you have me. We'll face this together. But the shadow of doubt lingered, a dark cloud hovering over her. Clara turned to Richard, her eyes filled with uncertainty. What if he's right? What if I am broken? The flicker of concern in Richard's eyes ignited her fear. You're not, he insisted fiercely. You're a survivor. Don't let him rewrite your story. Before either of them could speak again, Charles interjected, his tone dripping with feigned concern. And what kind of future can you offer her, Richard? She'll always be my wife. And you... He leaned forward, his voice dropping to a whisper. You're just a temporary distraction. Clara's breath caught in her throat, a cocktail of anxiety and anger swirling within her. The tension was palpable, a taut string pulled tight, ready to snap. Get out, she said suddenly, her voice stronger than she felt. Get out of my life, Charles. I'm not your possession anymore. Charles's expression shifted, his eyes narrowing as he regarded her with a mix of contempt and disbelief. You think this is over? You think I'll let you walk away without consequences? You're in over your head, Clara. Before she could respond, he turned sharply and strode toward the door, but not before casting one last loaded glance back at her. You'll regret this. You'll see. As the door clicked shut behind him, Clara felt the weight of the world lift slightly, yet the tremor in her heart told her that the battle was far from over. She turned to Richard, who was watching her with a mix of concern and admiration. Clara, you did well, he said, his voice steady. You stood up to him. But doubt crept in again, a familiar companion. Did I? Or did I just make things worse? She whispered, the fear of her past threatening to claw its way back into her life. Richard stepped closer, his eyes searching hers. You're stronger than you realize, but we need to prepare for whatever he might do next. This isn't over, Clara. The reality of his words sank in, and Clara felt the flicker of hope dim slightly, replaced by a cold awareness of the fight ahead. Charles wouldn't just disappear, he would come back, and when he did, she had to be ready. The new life she was beginning to build was at stake, and Clara was determined not to let it slip away. As she looked out the window, the vibrant garden beyond felt like a promise of new beginnings, yet the shadows of her past loomed ominously at the edges. A storm was brewing, and she had to find the strength to stand against it. The moment of crisis was at hand, and she could only hope that she would emerge on the other side, not just as a survivor, but as a warrior ready to reclaim her own story. Clara's heart raced as she stood frozen in the living room, the air charged with an electric tension that crackled like static before a storm. Charles' presence was a dark cloud looming over her newfound sanctuary, and she felt the strength she had begun to cultivate fray at the edges. Richard stood firm beside her, a pillar of protection, yet she could sense the unease simmering beneath his composed exterior. Charles's smile was a practiced mask, a facade of congeniality that barely concealed the predator lurking beneath. Clara, dear, he cooed, stepping further into the room as if claiming territory. I understand you're trying to reinvent yourself, but you must remember, everyone is watching. His words dripped with a chilling sweetness that sent a shiver down her spine. What do you mean by that? Clara found her voice, the tremor in her words betraying the fury bubbling inside her. She could feel Richard tense beside her, his protective aura radiating like a shield. Their eyes locked for a brief moment, an unspoken agreement passing between them. She wouldn't be alone in this fight. Oh, sweet Clara, Charles continued, his tone condescending. Don't play coy with me. You know exactly what I'm talking about. You leave your husband, and suddenly you think you can just waltz into a new life without consequences. People are talking, and not in the way you might hope. His gaze shifted to Richard, a calculated glint in his eyes. I wonder what kind of man would take in a woman like you. Is he aware of the baggage you carry? The air thickened with tension, Clara's pulse racing as she felt the weight of his insinuation hang between them. Richard took a step forward, his posture shifting from relaxed to confrontational. Clara is not some baggage, Charles. She's a woman reclaiming her life, and you will not intimidate her any longer. His voice rang with authority, cutting through the malevolence that Charles exuded. Clara's breath caught in her throat, the heat of Richard's defense igniting something within her. For so long, she had curled into herself, allowing Charles' words to suffocate her spirit. But here, in this lavish home that felt like a dream, she could feel the embers of her strength flicker back to life. "You don't get to decide what I am, Charles," she said, her voice steadier now, emboldened by Richard's unwavering support. "You've manipulated and controlled me for too long. I'm not afraid of you anymore." Charles's expression darkened, the charm slipping away to reveal a flash of irritation. "You think you can just erase the past? You think you can walk away from me and not face the consequences? You're wrong, Clara." His tone was low, a menacing growl that rumbled through the air like distant thunder. Max, sensing the rising tension, moved closer to Clara, his small hand reaching for hers, grounding her in that moment. "Mom, who is he?" he asked, his innocent voice slicing through the heavy atmosphere. Clara knelt beside her son, her heart swelling with protective love. "He's someone who doesn't have our best interests at heart, Max. You don't have to worry." She gave him a reassuring smile, though her own heart felt heavy with uncertainty. Richard stepped even closer, his eyes now locked onto Charles, challenging him. "You need to leave. You're not welcome here." His voice was calm yet firm, a stark contrast to the storm brewing in the room. Charles tilted his head slightly, feigning innocence. "Oh, but I'm just looking out for Clara. She needs someone to help her, someone who understands what she's been through." His gaze flickered back to Clara, the predator sizing up his prey. "But I see you found a knight in shining armor. How delightful. But can he protect you from the truth? Can he shield you from what you really are?" Clara's resolve hardened. "No more. I know who I am. I'm not defined by you or the choices you made for me." The words erupted, fueled by the anger she had stifled for too long. "I left you for a reason, Charles. You won't use fear to control me anymore." A flicker of surprise crossed Charles's face, quickly replaced by a smirk. "You think you've escaped? You think I'll let you go that easily?" He took a step closer, invading her space, and Clara felt Richard tense beside her, ready to intervene at a moment's notice. "Get out," Richard commanded, his voice low and steady. But Clara sensed the storm brewing beneath his calm demeanor. "You're not welcome in our lives. You've done enough damage." Charles' smile faltered, revealing a flash of anger that twisted his features. "You'll regret this, Clara. You're playing a dangerous game. People will always find a way to know the truth, and the truth is, you're still mine." Clara felt a cold chill run through her, but she stood her ground, feeling the warmth of Richard's presence beside her. "No, I'm not yours anymore. I'm free." The words rang out, defiance woven into every syllable. For a moment, the room held its breath, the silence heavy as the weight of their confrontation settled around them. But Clara knew this was just the beginning. Charles' presence was a stark reminder that her past was far from over. Then, without warning, Charles leaned in closer, his voice a low whisper meant only for her. "You can run, Clara, but you can never hide. I'll be watching. Always." With that, he turned on his heel, striding toward the door with a confidence that made Clara's skin crawl. Richard stepped in front of her, a protective barrier as Charles exited, leaving behind a lingering tension that filled the air like smoke. As the door clicked shut, a profound silence enveloped the room. Clara's heart raced, but she felt a flicker of hope amid the turmoil. Richard turned to her, his eyes filled with concern. "Are you okay?" Clara nodded, though her mind raced with the implications of Charles' threat. "I will be. I need to be." Max looked up at her, his small hand still gripping hers. "Mom, is he going to come back?" "I don't know, sweetheart," Claire replied, kneeling to meet his gaze. "But we'll face whatever comes together. You're safe here." Richard placed a hand on her shoulder, his warmth a soothing a balm against the chaos that threatened to consume her. "You're not alone, Clara. We'll find a way to protect what we've built." Clara felt a surge of gratitude for Richard, but the shadow of Charles loomed large, a reminder that the fight was far from over. She had escaped one prison, but the battle for her freedom had just begun. As the evening wore on, Clara understood that she needed to prepare for what lay ahead. The confrontation had ignited a fire within her, and she would not let Charles extinguish it. But as she looked at her son, nestled safely between her and Richard, she knew that she had to make a choice, one that would ultimately shape their future, one filled with both promise and peril. With a renewed sense of purpose, Clara steeled herself for the challenges ahead. The world outside may have been dark and daunting, but within this sanctuary, she had found not just safety, but a glimmer of hope, and she was determined to fight for it, no matter the cost. Clara could feel the tension in the room coiling tighter, like a spring ready to snap. Charles' eyes were dark and predatory, and for the first time since stepping into Richard's home, she felt the walls closing in on her. Richard remained resolute beside her, his presence a steady anchor in the tempest that Charles had unleashed. It was as if the entire atmosphere shifted, heavy with the weight of unspoken accusations and threats masked in charm. "I'm not afraid of you," Clara said, her voice steady despite the tremor in her heart. She had once spent so many years anchored in fear, the chains of Charles's manipulation binding her tightly. But here, in this moment, a spark ignited within her, a fierce, burning desire for liberation. "You don't control me anymore." A flicker of surprise crossed Charles's face, quickly replaced by a smirk that danced at the corners of his lips. "Such spirit," he mused, leaning slightly closer as if to savor her defiance. "But you must understand that the world is unforgiving. People will talk, Clara. They always do." His voice dripped with a saccharine sweetness that only made Clara's stomach churn. Richard stepped forward, his jaw clenched, his protective instinct surging to the forefront. "And what of it, Charles? You think gossip holds any power over Clara? She's stronger than you ever realized." The confidence in Richard's voice was a balm to Clara's frayed nerves, and she took a breath, allowing his words to bolster her courage. Charles' gaze darted between them, irritation seeping into his demeanor like a shadow creeping across a sunny day. "Isn't it cute how you think you can protect her? You're just a temporary distraction, a fleeting presence in her life. I'm the one who knows her. I'm the one who has always been there." His words sliced through the air, sharp and taunting. Clara refused to let his venom seep into her mind. "You've always been there to control me, Charles, to belittle me, but I've learned to see through your lies." Her resolve strengthened with each word, the truth of her experiences pouring from her heart. "You may have made me feel small, but I no longer accept your definitions or your judgments." Max, still clinging to Clara's hand, watched the exchange with wide eyes, confusion clouding his innocent face. "Mom, why does he keep saying those mean things? You're not small. You're strong," he whispered, squeezing her hand tighter, his loyalty unwavering. Clara turned to her son, her heart swelling with love. "You're right, sweet boy. I am strong, and I'm going to show everyone just how strong I can be." The warmth of Max's faith in her lit a fire in her chest, pushing back the cold remnants of Charles' influence that still lingered like a dark fog. "Is this what you want, Clara?" Charles's voice dripped with disdain, his eyes narrowing as he focused on her. "To be a single mother, living off the charity of a man who's little more than a glorified handyman? You think this is where you belong?" He laughed softly, a mocking sound that echoed through the room, sending chills down Clara's spine. Richard's posture stiffened, and Clara felt a surge of protective anger on his behalf. "You don't know the first thing about him, Charles. Richard is a man of compassion and integrity, qualities you couldn't begin to fathom," she retorted, her voice gaining strength. "And unlike you, he doesn't diminish me. He lifts me up." Charles recoiled slightly, his mask slipping further as anger flared in his eyes. "You think he can protect you from your past? From the truth? You have no idea what you're getting yourself into." His words rumbled low, foreboding and ominous. Clara felt the weight of his threat settle heavily on her shoulders. She could feel the shadows of her past creeping back, trying to wrap around her like a suffocating blanket. "You're wrong, Charles. I've faced my past, and I've emerged stronger. You can't control me with fear anymore." Each word was a step closer to her freedom, a victory over the chains that had once bound her. Richard moved closer, his presence like a shield against the darkness that threatened to consume her. "Clara is not your property, Charles. She's a person with her own life, her own choices. You need to leave now." His voice was calm but firm, the steel in his tone a clear warning. "Leave?" Charles echoed, incredulous. "You think I would just walk away? That I would let you take what's mine?" The threat hung heavy in the air, and Clara could feel her heart pounding in her chest. This was it, the moment she had dreaded yet longed for, the confrontation that would either shatter her or set her free. "Yours?" Clara spat, the word laced with disdain. "You don't own me, Charles. You never did, and you never will. I refuse to be your prisoner any longer." The truth spilled from her lips, and with each declaration, Clara felt her shackles begin to break. The silence that followed was deafening, the air charged as Charles' expression twisted into something dark and dangerous. "You'll regret this, Clara. I promise you that." His voice was low, a chilling whisper that made her skin crawl, but Clara stood her ground, the fire of her spirit igniting her courage. "I welcome any consequence that comes from my freedom. I will not let you dictate my life any longer." The finality of her words echoed in the room, a declaration of war against the past that had haunted her for so long. Max looked up at her, his eyes shining with admiration and pride. "You're my superhero, Mom," he said softly, his innocent belief bolstering her resolve further. Charles, cornered and furious, glared at Clara, his mask slipping completely. "You think this is over?" He stepped back, his voice rising in a chilling crescendo. "This is just the beginning. You'll wish you'd never crossed me." Before Clara could respond, the door swung open behind Charles, the sound reverberating through the room like a gunshot. An imposing figure stepped inside, instantly shifting the atmosphere once more. Clara's heart skipped a beat as she recognized the face. Anna, her closest friend and confidant, the very woman who had always believed in her strength. "Clara, I came as soon as I heard," Anna exclaimed, her voice a beacon of hope that pierced through the darkness. Clara's heart soared, a rush of gratitude flooding her chest. Anna's presence felt like a warm embrace, a reminder that she was not alone in this fight. But as Clara locked eyes with Anna, the tension in the room thickened. Charles' gaze flickered to Anna, recognition dawning, and in that moment, Clara knew that the battle was far from over. "Guess you've brought your little army, Clara," Charles sneered, his expression a mask of fury and amusement. The challenge hung in the air, and Clara steeled herself for the storm that was about to erupt, knowing it would take everything she had to fight for her freedom once and for all. Clara's heart pounded in her chest, a frantic drum echoing the urgency of the moment. The room felt alive, a battleground where every word exchanged was a weapon. Charles's smirk twisted into a sneer, and Clara could feel the anger simmering beneath the surface, ready to boil over. She had always been afraid of this man, the one who had shaped her fears and insecurities, but now, standing beside Richard and with Max holding her hand, she felt a fierce determination igniting within her. "Do you really think this charade can last?" Charles taunted, his voice low and dangerous. "You think you're safe here? You're just a moment away from losing everything." His words dripped with venom, and Clara felt the weight of his threat settle like a stone in her stomach. "Maybe you don't understand how strong I've become," Clara replied, her voice unwavering. "You're right about one thing. I've faced my past, and I've come out stronger. You can't intimidate me anymore." She felt Richard's reassuring presence beside her, a silent affirmation that she was not alone in this fight. Max, his small hand gripping Clara's tighter, looked up at her with wide, innocent eyes. "Mom, I don't like him. Why is he being so mean?" His voice trembled slightly, the confusion evident on his face. Clara knelt down to meet his gaze, her heart aching for the childhood innocence that was being threatened by Charles's cruelty. "Because he's scared, sweetheart," Clara explained softly, brushing a stray hair from Max's forehead. "He's scared of losing control, just like I was. But we're not going to let him win, are we?" She smiled at Max, trying to instill confidence within him, though her own heart raced with uncertainty. Charles' eyes narrowed, his facade cracking under the pressure of Clara's defiance. "You think you can win this? You're nothing without me, Clara. You'll always be defined by your past." His voice rose, a sharp edge cutting through the tension in the room. "And your precious little boy? What kind of life can he have with you? A single mother living off the charity of others?" The words struck like a slap, and Clara's breath caught in her throat. She could feel the anger boiling within her, but it was quickly overshadowed by the protective instinct that surged for her son. "You don't get to define us, Charles. Max is strong, and he deserves better than the shadow of your control." Richard stepped forward, his presence an unwavering shield. "You're a coward, Charles, hiding behind your money and manipulation. You think that power gives you the right to bully others? To threaten a child?" His voice was low, but the intensity was palpable, a warning echoing in the charged air. "Stay out of this, Richard," Charles spat, his eyes blazing with fury. "You have no idea what you're getting yourself into. This isn't just about Clara anymore. You're meddling in affairs that could destroy you." The threat hung heavy, a dark cloud looming over their newfound safety. Clara felt the chill of his words wrap around her, but she refused to let fear dictate her actions. "You can't scare us, Charles. I'm not the same woman you once knew. I fought too hard to let you take that away from me." Her voice was steady, a declaration of her newfound strength. Max, emboldened by Clara's words, stepped forward, his small stature a stark contrast to the tension in the room. "You're a bully!" he shouted, his voice ringing with innocence and power. "You can't scare my mom. She's the strongest person I know." The room fell silent, the unexpected ferocity of his words echoing like a clarion call. For a moment, Clara's heart swelled with pride, but that pride quickly turned to dread as Charles's expression morphed into something darker. "You think you can protect her, little boy?" he sneered, his voice low and menacing. "You have no idea what I'm capable of." "Leave him out of this," Clara shouted, stepping in front of Max instinctively, her body a barrier between her son and the man who had tormented her for so long. The protective instinct surged within her, a primal urge to shield him from harm. "You think you can shield him from the truth? Charles laughed, a chilling sound that sent shivers down Clara's spine. He's not safe with you. You're just a failed mother, trying to play house with a glorified handyman. The venom in his words dripped like poison, infecting the atmosphere with despair. But Clara stood firm, her heart racing as she realized the stakes had never been higher. You won't touch him, she said, her voice resolute. I will fight for my son, for our future. You're nothing but a ghost from my past, and I refuse to let you haunt us any longer. The tension crackled in the air, a palpable force that threatened to explode. Clara could feel the weight of her past bearing down on her, but she also felt the strength of her present, the love of her son, and the unwavering support of Richard beside her. This was not just about her anymore. It was about protecting Max and carving out a future free from fear. Charles's eyes narrowed, fury radiating from him like heat waves. You think you can escape me? I'll make sure you regret this, Clara. I'll ruin everything you hold dear. The threat hung in the air, a chilling reminder of the power he once wielded over her. In that moment, Clara realized that the battle was not just for her freedom, but for Max's safety as well. The thought ignited a fire within her, a fierce determination to protect her son at all costs. We'll see about that, she whispered, her voice steady. I'm ready to fight. Just then, the door swung open with a loud bang, and Clara's heart lurched as she turned to see a familiar figure standing in the doorway. It was Grace, Richard's sister, her face pale and eyes wide with alarm. What's going on? She gasped, taking in the scene before her. The sudden appearance of Grace sent a ripple of shock through the room. Clara's heart raced as she realized that the confrontation was far from over. Charles's expression darkened, and a flicker of uncertainty crossed his face as he realized he was no longer in control. Grace, stay back, Richard warned, stepping protectively in front of Clara and Max. The tension in the room surged, the air thick with unspoken threats and the weight of impending danger. The cliffhanger hung in the air like a storm cloud, leaving Clara and Richard bracing for the fallout. Would they be able to protect Max and themselves from the wrath of Clara's past? Would Charles unleash his fury, or would the strength of their newfound bond hold fast against the darkness threatening to engulf them? As the shadows loomed, Clara knew one thing for certain. She would fight with every ounce of her being to protect her son and the life they were building together. The battle was far from over, but she was ready to face whatever came next.